Hi, this is Ivy. Let's talk about the complex ethical considerations surrounding targeted marketing efforts. So, first, let's look at the example. It says there are more doctors smoke camels than any other cigarette. So, if I'm not familiar with English, camels, I would think it's talking about an animal and not a brand, especially if I'm not familiar with cigarette brands. So I think this is very confusing. So this should be avoided, especially when we're creating designs for social mobilization projects. And also, when creating designs, we shouldn't be condescending, aside from avoiding confusion. We should be very sensitive, especially usually those people from the vulnerable communities. They weren't able to uh, finish their schooling, finish school. So most probably it would be more difficult for them to comprehend or to understand certain words or foreign language if we were to use them on our design. Next, children as the target audience. So hopefully the parents were asked for consent for their child, which was used on the example on the screen above. So personally, I think it's easier to edit the content or the elements if we were to use elements or design such as the one below on our screen, because we won't be using a real person's face, because I think issues such as informed consent, privacy, and also the vulnerability of the child involved, they come to front. We need to ensure that this is not just an effective marketing poster or an ad, but also an ethically and also responsible one. Next, targeting non-indigenous people. So we need to, again, this is based on culture. We need to take into consideration the the norms, the issues, and the biases of various cultures, various communities when we're trying to produce posters for interventions. So say for example on the screen now, it's about tule or circumcision. So in the Philippines, it's a rite of passage for men, but in other countries, they don't mind. It's not as an important, uh, you know, right, or not an important activity for guys to go through. So with an example on the screen now, I think it's very condescending. Yes, it's eye catchy. Yes, you got my attention, but it's also kind of offensive. I think this one's better given the information involved, but I think they can improve on the color or the how they place the elements in the design so that it can be more as attention getter like the other one. But this one, it's better for me because it involved the benefits, and also it gave the people something to read on about HIV related statistics. So it's also about Tule, but I think it's more scientific based because there are facts. So this one's better for me, right? So next, methods of targeting. So if you're producing or planning for an intervention, I really think that it's very questionable for, say for example, this one, offering price or financial incentive to stop smoking. I think it's questionable because what if, say for example, personally me, for example, I don't smoke. So what if I need the money, so I will start smoking so then I can quit and then I can win. What if you think about doing that, right? It kind of encourages people to take up the habit just to gain something from quitting. But and also, if I may say, this example, it's from California. I think it's a real contest, quit to win. So this one, it's shady, and this one's a good example of something you should avoid. Next, partnerships. So when partnerships are with government to government or government and non-profit organization, usually it's smooth, it's okay, but usually ethical considerations or ethical issues arise when there's partnership with profit oriented and also the government. No, so the list on the screen, I think those are the things that they need to consider before entering a partnership, any partnership, but most especially partnership with profit oriented ones, so they can conduct, the program, the partnership, and they can properly, and they can have more transparency and accountability. Next, so there are two types of audiences, the easy to reach and the hard to reach. So easy to reach, they are those people who would readily adopt to changes. So say for example, there's a new implementation of no smoking. If the area or the room is there, if the room is enclosed, so if the windows are not open, you cannot smoke inside. So low hanging fruit audiences would really comply. Maybe they will open the windows or they will go to their balconies and smoke there. But the hard to reach ones, most of the time, those who belong to the groups that we have difficulty engaging with, sometimes it's because of their current predicament or their current situation. Sometimes it's the reason why it's the hard for them to comply or hard for them to adopt, because say for example you gave that implementation rule or that the recommendation wherein you cannot smoke if the windows are closed. What if that person doesn't have any balcony, doesn't have windows in his very small room? He cannot comply to that implementation, because normally those within the marginalized and the most vulnerable sectors, they have little to no resources, and they don't have much liberty, much space to work with. So it's kind of more difficult for them to adopt the changes. Okay, next. So when we're trying to, get across the message or deliver the message, no, normally the vehicles that we use or the appeals that we use to drive the message, normally it's emotional appeals, and under those emotional appeals come in fear and humor. So this applies even for the traditional marketing. So we use sex appeal, fear, humor, other emotional appeals. But then for social mobilization projects or visuals, I think we should use this scarcely or rarely, because if we use fear and humor, it's difficult to navigate, the fine line between persuasion, manipulation, and also it raises ethical concerns. It's like you're mocking those people that are marginalized, when using humor. So I guess it's better to just stick to the facts. Okay, now again, as mentioned earlier, the incentives, it's kind of shady sometimes. It depends, on the implementation, or it depends on the activity. And as for the penalties, when you're giving penalties for certain mistakes, we can call them, or when you're imposing penalties, it kind of also raises ethical questions, because how can we say that the design of the system, the penalty system, and even the incentive system, how can we say that it's fair, that this is not coercion? How can we really need just to make sure first is that everything is done with utmost respect to the, of course, autonomy, individual autonomy of your target audiences. And then here's the role of culture in establishing ethical standards. I think I have mentioned that earlier. We need to think of how different cultures, different communities view different things individually. So there are norms, values, biases. So when we're designing strategies or targeting, this should be really be understood first. We really need to study them, and of course, while we examine the values of and norms of different cultures, we need to remember that it has an impact on the general marketing efforts of different social mobilization projects. And then, all right, so here it's research about research ethics. So if you're doing a project, creating a strategy, of course, the first thing you need to do is research first. And those lists provided on the screen, those are the checklist from NHS Health Research Authority, and they talk about um, you know what are the considerations, so that you can ensure validity and ethicality of the findings of the research. And then the findings of the research will then help you create your social mobilization plan, the targeting, the marketing, how to monitor and stuff. So these are the questions that matter, these are the information that matter when it comes to creating the backbone of your research. And then, of course, it'll help in the overall creation of the plan for social mobilization. Finally, for code of ethics, most codes, particularly those developed with a research focus, they contain common elements. And just like in marketing or in research, it's important to have respect for participants, cultural sensitivity, there's fairness, privacy, and also informed consent. So, those are the elements that are consistent. And overall, in conclusion, uh, we need to stress out honesty, transparency, and to avoid conflicts of interest, and also to build trust and maintain integrity within the marketing system, starting from the research up to the monitoring and evaluation. So that's it. Thank you so much for listening.